Hey everyone, this is a different type of video that we're doing today. We are meeting with, and I'm gonna be honest here, one of my favorite creators out there, Caleb Baker with BakerOverland. For those who have never seen his videos, why don't you give us a little rundown? What is your style? What is your niche type of thing?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for letting me do this with you. I really appreciate it, man. So I really like telling stories. I think that's, there's people that like to educate. There's people that like to teach DIY. There's people that like to do product review. And I just like the stories. I like history. I like anything that we can kind of hone into some sort of specific tale or place and go and explore that and kind of dig deep into that. And then on the other side, in terms of the type of content, I like to make the stuff that's most fun for me, the stuff that like kind of gets my juices going and just excites me, is real cinematic, like trying to pursue a kind of like a theatrical experience in the overlanding stuff. And so whatever story I'm pursuing, I want it to have like an emotional appeal, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I mean, I love all types of content in the space and I watch all types of channels, but the stuff that I enjoy making is real story driven.
And I would say it's more documentary style.
That's fair. Yeah, for sure. Documentary style, trying to do something like, I mean, I grew up watching those mini docuseries on like the History Channel and Discovery Channel. And some of my favorite movies were stuff like A River Runs Through It. And, all those big like 90s kind of adventure films, even sports adventure like Rudy or Last of the Mohicans. And so anyways, when I go out there and try to find a story to tell, I always think of it through the lens of like, what was the content that got me excited to watch? And then let's try and tell stories like that.
And your editing is mind-blowing. You have to go watch his videos. His channel will be linked down in the description below. It's BakerOverland, easy to find. And as a comparison, we both recently did the same video, Half Moon Gulch, Champion Mill in Colorado, and you'll see vastly different approach to it.
Sure.
And while mine has some little pieces of history in it, your deep dive into the history was just amazing.
Thank you.
The letters that you read, the stories that were told, the background of the people, that level of depth is just not really seen in a YouTube video.
I appreciate you saying that. I think for me, honestly, it gets me, when I do the research into a place, it gets me more excited about the trip. I mean, going camping is fun enough on its own and hanging out. But then if I know that like, oh, there's this guy that went to a place and discovered gold for the first time, in this area, and he developed this mine, and we get to go and see what he went through and read his journals. And then when you're in that place, you're kind of looking at that environment through that lens. Like, to me, that adds so much weight. I do the same thing like when we research like Native American stuff in the Ozarks where I'm from, and we get to go to some of these caves and caverns and we see like the petroglyphs and stuff. And we're just going, this is like ancient, rich culture. And then instead of it just being like, oh, this is a beautiful area, you're like, no, there's like hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of years of humanity within these places. And I don't know, it just adds a lot of like it makes me appreciate it more and realize like I'm such a blip on the radar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Now, what got you started doing that type of video? Or did you start, did your channel start that way?
Okay.
Or did it evolve into that?
Good question. It definitely evolved. So when I always say, like, in my area in Arkansas, there's two phenomenal channels that are massive that everybody in the overland outdoor space knows. And that is Grant from Arkansas Off-Road. That's his truck right off camera over there. And then Matt McKellen from Ozark Overland Adventures. They're both in my neck of the woods, and they make two different types of content, and it's amazing, and it's resonated with 100,000 people for each of them. So I mean, they're just doing a great job. In the beginning, I knew that those guys were successful in the space. And so I just tried to copycat them.
Well, which is not a bad strategy.
Right.
You know, if something is successful, replicate it, right?
Replicate it. But here's the problem with that for me was, number one, I wasn't as good at their style of video as they were. And number two, I didn't enjoy making that type of content because it wasn't true to me. It wasn't the type of content that got me excited. And it's not a knock on that content. It's, in fact, the opposite. It's just saying they were doing that well and I wasn't doing what I could do well. And so over time, I started to find myself saying, either I'm going to quit or I'm going to find content that I can make that gets me excited to make content again. So I'm not just...
We went through the same evolution. We started with trail guides, mile this, mile this. It wasn't resonating with me. It wasn't resonating with my audience. And I didn't really enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
I wasn't telling the story of a place. I wasn't digging into anything. It was just filming every little detail. And it was boring to edit. It was boring to me to watch.
Right.
And if I'm not going to enjoy watching it, I'm certainly not enjoying producing it.
Right.
And feel that in the video.
It may have found an audience if you stuck with that, and that may have, because there's lots of people that would love that type of content.
And there's channels that excel at it.
Right. But in order for you to stick with this in the long run, you have to do what excites you.
Right.
And that was the evolution that happened to me about, 15 to 20 videos in, is I just said, I need to stop trying to copycat people and start just doing what I...
Find your own voice.
Find my own voice. And so, yeah, and that's definitely evolved over the time between that decision and now. But I feel like now each project, I genuinely can say I'm so excited to go shoot and edit.
Well, that's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And I guess if there's a downside to that, there's no possible way you can produce weekly content.
No.
Not at that level, at that deepness. But, you know, for those who are considering doing a channel, you have a channel, that doesn't matter. I mean, you look at someone like Mark Roper, who has millions of subscribers, and he puts out one video a month.
Yeah.
You know,
sure.
And they're super successful.
Yeah.
And I think your style lends itself to that longer production cycle, but what you get out of this is a richness of content that you don't get in other types of formats.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I'm jealous of how much faster other guys can churn out content, because I'll never be able to do it at that level. But it is like what you said. I think it's, if it takes me 3 weeks to do what someone else could do, drop in a video, if that takes me 3 weeks, someone else could do that in 3 days. But the process of making that thing is something that keeps me excited and involved. And ultimately, YouTube is about consistency, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever your interval of release drop is, it's about consistency. So if you're going to release once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, once every other month, consistent, predictable. Like, that's important in the YouTube game. And so whatever type of content you want to make, it's finding, okay, what's a realistic timeline that I can churn that content out? And for me, yeah, because of the production type of stuff that I do, it does take longer. Now, I will say this, though. I found ways, if there's someone else out there that's listening to this, maybe that's into content creation, and they also like stuff that takes a little bit longer, there are ways that you can keep your audience engaged, even if your big project drops are more spaced out. And so I started a podcast, number one, and I drop those episodes every Monday, and that's something I can do quickly. And then I do a live stream conversation kind of like this. And I do that every Tuesday night with a different content creator, which you need to come on, by the way.
Absolutely.
We'll schedule that. But anyways, so what I'm getting at is there are ways.
Filler.
It's filler. It's keeping your audience engaged, saying, hey, in 2 weeks, a video is going to drop. And here's some stuff that can keep you engaged in the meantime.
But then your main videos are quality over quantity.
Yes. And I want to be careful here, because I'm not suggesting that people that spend less time are producing less quality.
No, I don't mean that. Yeah. But in terms of the richness of the content, and I'll show a clip from Half Moon Gulch, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
Today was the day we started the climb up Champion Mountain. Once again, my mind on Jackson's journals. January 6th. Pleasant day. Built a big fire on Rock Rim to thaw the gravel. Kept it up all day. Wolverine came into camp while I was at fire. Dogs killed him after I broke his back with a belt axe. Hell of a fight. January 7th. Clear day. Removed fire embers and dug into rim on bedrock. Panned out 8 treaty cups, dirt, and found nothing but fine colors. 9th cup, I got 1 nugget of coarse gold. Feel good tonight. Dogs know it. Drum is lame all over. Sewed up gash in his leg tonight. Wolverine no good for dog. January 8th. Pleasant day. Well, Tom, old boy, I've got the diggings at last. But can't be back in a week. Dogs can't travel. Damn a Wolverine.
You can see the editing that goes into it, the overlays, the research into historical photos, historical video footage. That takes time.
It does, yeah, that takes some time, and there's no way to like reading through some guy's journals to pick which entries you're going to use in a. There's no way to do that unless you just sit down and read a bunch of journal entries.
Right, and then for this particular video, Half Moon Gulch, it's not like you could just Google some of this stuff. You had to do research through the Denver Public Library.
Right. Yeah, if you ask a lot of people who this guy was that struck gold and what his experience was, these aren't popular stories. They're not taught in like history classes in schools and stuff, because he's a largely kind of insignificant figure outside of the fact that he founded that mine. But he has I found this in the Ozarks too, is there is like a seemingly unending amount of amazingly profound and inspirational stories from nobodies that grew up in these hills. And that's the case with him, is like if you read their journals and you dig into their lives, you can find so much inspiration. But they're not, you got to go digging for that. You can't just, that stuff's not popular enough.
You can't go on Gemini and say, write a story about this.
Right,
I've
sure.
tried.
Sure.
But that level of research really shows in the videos. And cool. I think that's one of the things that separates your videos from other people's. And it's powerful. It's deep. Reading some of those journal entries, some of them, you're like, why did he put that in there? It's kind of
right.
Like it's almost meaningless to the story. Mm-hmm. But then you put the other stuff in there, and it tells a story of this guy.
Yeah. And like I said, it's like you're just adding layers of complexity and depth, and that's what I like about that. Is it's not that any one entry isn't necessarily more or less meaningful than the others, but you're going, oh man, he woke up and almost got killed by a mountain lion, and he had to break its back, and now the mountain lion ate all his food, so now he's gonna go hungry for 3 days, and then he went back to bed.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was hilarious.
And then when you're in that spot and you're camping, you're going like, we're sitting here on our memory foam air mattresses, and there's like some people that did some tough stuff in the same spot. Yeah. That's what gets me inspired.
Yeah. Now, did you have a background in documentary footage or anything like this?
No. So I worked for the previous 12 years. I worked for a marketing agency, and we did web and app development plus some videography for marketing materials. So I do have a professional background in not documentary making, but in marketing in general and in videography. And then prior to that, I was a creative director at another institution. So pieces of my YouTube channel have come from my past, but what I'm doing right now is unique in terms of my career path. It wasn't something I did.
Okay. What got you started in the, would you say you're an overlander versus a camper versus a off-roader? Yeah. How do you classify yourself?
Whatever I say, someone's going to tell me I'm wrong.
So. Whatever. How do you classify yourself?
I say overland, but for me, I don't get caught up in the definition. For me, overland is a nice, clean word for people that like to get to remote places, sometimes difficult to get to places, to camp out of their vehicle. And I'm not super stuck on like whether it took a day or 2 days or 3 days or whatever, it's just, that. So I would call it overlanding. And what got me into it is probably.
That was kind of my next question, so he beat me to it.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you asked that. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun. But it was really, I've always liked to camp, but I didn't know. I just never realized that we had access to public land to get out and explore. And I thought you had to know someone with private land. Mm. And when COVID hit in 2020 and everything shut down, I was like, we got to figure out something. I got 3 kids. We got to figure out something to do with these kids. I got to go do something, get them out of this house. And that's when I started researching, and I learned about, our national forest, which somehow I had missed the note that we had access to that. And so I bought my truck and didn't do a whole lot of stuff to it. Just lifted it, put some bigger tires on it. That was it. And we started getting out and going camping, ground tents. And probably the second or third trip like that, the hook was set.
It doesn't take much.
No, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. I want to do this every weekend.
Now, do you do mostly solo? Do you do family stuff?
In the beginning, it was one rig, but with my kids. So it was like, I would say it was solo, but it was just me and my kids. And then probably in that first year, probably when we were kind of doing this stuff, we got out on one particular trip, and I had a bad experience where we had some jerks come into our camp. They're a bunch of rocks, and I was solo. I was concerned about my kids in that situation. So starting from that point on, we started going in groups, started going with other people. But yeah, it's a little mix of everything now.
Okay. Do you, besides the safety factor, do you prefer to be by yourself, or do you prefer to be in a group?
If I have my kids, I prefer to be in a group now because of the one bad encounter. And if you want to know what that bad encounter is about, there's a video on my channel called Facing Fear, and I retell that story. So you can check that out if you want to see what went down with that. But after that, if I have my kids, I feel better knowing that if something happens to me, there's another adult around. But if it's just me, sometimes I love going solo. I'll do that once every other month. I'll pack up and go out and do an item on my own. That's a lot of fun.
What would you say the biggest challenges are when you're out solo?
Ooh, man, honestly, there's obstacles that I wouldn't probably tackle solo that I would in a group, just because recovery is easier. Like if I can't really tell how deep some water or mud is, if I'm solo, I'm probably going to try to find another route. Whereas if I'm in a group, then yeah, it's a lot easier to just say I'm going for it, and my buddies will help me.
Have your winch ready.
Right. But other than that, I don't see it as particularly harder or easier. It's just sometimes you want the quiet,
Oh yeah, I understand that. Now, where do you see your channel going? Where do you see yourself going personally with overlanding?
Yeah, so I made a big step, actually. I put a video out on the channel about this. So I officially stepped down from
ask you about this
position. Yeah. Where I had worked the previous 12 years. I made the decision, and I won't go into all the details of that. Again,
there's a
video out. You can find out the details. But I made the decision that I want to give my attention to 2 things. Number one, this channel, BakerOverland, focus on this and give myself the ability to maybe churn content out a little bit faster than I could when I was working my day job. Because long term, I really want to do this full time. That would be a dream come true. I don't know if it'll happen, but I'm going to try. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is I started a marketing agency that does web app development, social media, search engine marketing, and videography. And it's the same stuff I've done the previous 12 years, but I switched out, it's called Starshine Media. And really what this allows me to do is continue to pay our bills through that agency and spend more time on the channel. And then over time, hopefully those will merge.
And working for yourself.
Yeah, and working for myself.
That's huge.
Yeah. More risk, but more reward.
Now, do you work remote? Or
so previously I was working remote at my previous job, probably the last 6 months before I transitioned out completely. But ultimately it was clear to me that in order to do this the way I wanted to, I need to be able to run the business. I can't rely on someone else to run it and make decisions that I don't have control over. So for me, the only way this was going to work is if I went independent.
All right, when you're working, right? Not overlanding, when you're doing what is now your job,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Are you doing that while you're overlanding? Are you doing Starlink and things like that?
100%. So a lot of the clients that I'm working with now are in this space. So what I found is that I get so much more excited and interested when I'm doing my day job for people that are already in the outdoor off-road space. So I had the bed rack company right here, Extrusion, starting to do work from them. On the side of my truck over here says OZK Vans. They're one of my clients I'm doing work for. There's numerous ones here in the space. A lot of the vendors are here. And so when I'm out on trips, absolutely, like just earlier before we did this call, I had to run into the cabin to get on my computer and upload some footage for Anchor, the battery company. Mm-hmm. And this is not content that lives on my channel. This is marketing content that goes on their platform. But I get to be here. I'm not in an office. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
So yes, occasionally I still have to go do work to pay the bills, but it's a good hybrid that's working right now.
And you're using Starlink?
Yes. Yeah. I keep a Starlink with me, and that's how I stay online.
There's really no other option.
Yeah. No, not. Without Starlink, I would be significantly limited in terms of my ability to work remotely, because I work in large files. So like video files are large. Like for Anchor today, I had to upload all the daily footage that we shot from the expo today. Well, that's 30 or 40 gigs. You can't do that over a little cell phone. You know what I mean? So you got to have. So yeah, Starlink is a super valuable tool in my line of work.
Enabler.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I couldn't do it without it, really.
Let's talk about your rig. What do you got?
19 TRD Sport. A lot of people think that's funny. It's not a TRD off-road. It's the Sport. The reason I did that was I knew I was going to pull everything off of it and do my own stuff. So I didn't want to pay the TRD off-road price when I was going to pull all their stuff off anyways. Mm-hmm. Run a Dobinson suspension, 2.5 inch lift. I've got all pro sliders, backwoods front bumper, coastal road rear bumper, RCI skid plates, extrusion bed rack, open road tent, Prinsu roof rack, and then a million other little things. But that's like that's kind of the stuff you see. And then, we've done a lot of stuff you don't see, a lot of mods you don't see, but that's the big stuff.
When you're going about planning an adventure, what are some of the tools that you use? What are the resources that you look at?
Yeah, so for me, Onyx, I use lots of different maps. I love Gaia, the layers, and I love Onyx. So right now here recently, I've been focusing on Onyx, and I use that to kind of route plan my trip ahead of time, get a good idea of some potential spots where we might want to camp. So I'll do that. But then I really use the Notes app, as simple as this is, to make a list of things that I need to check. Even before we came here to this expo, I was like, items to make sure that I have in the rig, and I'll make the little list that you can check stuff off. So for me, I'll get my route plan. I'll make sure I have all my recovery and first aid, the essential stuff, a gallon a day, available gallon a day of water, and then just go explore and have fun.
So what are some of the mistakes you've made in overlanding?
Oh man, so many. All right. I was one of those guys that when I got into overlanding, for some dumb reason, I thought I needed to have every single piece of recovery equipment known to man before I could go on my first trip.
Oh.
I was just like so stupidly terrified of getting stuck or stranded or, which I guess that's better than like not being prepared at all. But it was overkill. And so, I used to have high lifts mounted on this and traction. I bought traction boards, never came off my truck. Now, I'm not saying that's a dumb purchase, but for me, I never used them. And
they have their use.
They have their use. But I had all.
And sometimes that uses accessory.
Yeah.
It
looks
aesthetics.
Cool. It looks cool. Let's just say what it is. Now, so in the beginning, I overspent before I would start the experience. My advice to people now is I say, just go. And like, if the trail that you're exploring looks too technical for what you think your rig can handle, then back up and
or your skill level.
Yeah. Then back up and do something else. Like, but don't wait until like, I need to take 600 classes and I need to have a fully built $100,000 rig with every, accessory under this. No, just put some gas in the tank, grab a ham sandwich and go. Like, and if you encounter something that is too challenging or that you don't think you're ready for, back up and do something else. But I think that too many people spend too much time delaying out of fear instead of just going. And then, because honestly, once you go, you can go, okay, now I know what I really need, you know,
Yeah.
instead of just trying to guess based
Things
on.
like toilet paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Yes.
something to forget.
No, I've done it. Leaves are not a good thing.
Especially those 3-pointed ones.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Especially once they get crumbly. Not good. Yeah.
So do you always have a checklist? Do you have a main checklist? Yeah, you kind of mentioned that.
Yeah, I don't always have a checklist. It depends on the trip that I'm going on. I've got spots in the Ozarks that are close to me, that I know well, that I know are gravel roads to get there, and that I know that I've got, you know, ways to communicate if I get stranded. And so sometimes I just go. You know, I don't do a whole lot of. But if it's going to be a longer trip or I'm going into some places that I'm unfamiliar with, then yeah, I try to make sure I have a good checklist and I'm prepared.
What are some of the most important things on a checklist that people may not think about?
The stuff that I forget is never like, I always remember the recovery gear that I never need to use. You know what I mean? You know, I always have snatch blocks, and I always have, like, you know, the different types of D-rings and my gloves, if I want to wear my gloves, if I need to. I always have, and I end up very rarely using a lot of that stuff. But the stuff that I end up forgetting is like my DOP kit, or like my, you know, my toothbrush, or like just simple stuff. Like you mentioned toilet paper. It's always something dumb like that. Like because all my main recovery gear lives on the truck. So it's very rare that I will say I have started, because of an incident that happened recently, I have started carrying extra brake fluid, because one time I was on the trail and got pinned up on a rock. It ripped my brake line out, drained the brake fluid. We ended up having to put it back and hold it, pinch it on with vice grips.
No, common.
And it was a little bit sketchy, because I was having I had lost, you know, a lot of that fluid, and ended up completely frying my drum brake. Anyways, a lot of that could have been mitigated, and I could have got home a lot easier if I just had some brake fluid that I could have topped that off. So I do keep that in
that's a good one. That's a good one. So you had a bad experience out there. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite experience?
Oh, dude.
I know. That's a tough one.
They're all so much fun, man. I would probably say there's a video that by the time your audience watches this will have already released, but we're releasing it tomorrow night here at the event. And it was the most fun that I've had shooting a video ever. And basically, I've found a pilot that flies airplanes, lands them out in fields, and camps out of his airplane.
Oh, wow.
And I asked him if he wanted to do a video with me. So I said, we'll pick a spot. I'll take the truck and overland to the spot. We'll mount cameras all over your plane. You'll fly out there. We'll meet up and an airplane and a travel camp. And so we did that, and that's it's called airplane camping. So it's out on the channel now if you're watching this, but it hasn't been released currently.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they'll show it tomorrow night here.
Oh, that should be fun.
Yeah,
it should be fun. Well, Caleb, appreciate your time. It's been educational and hopefully a little entertaining. If you guys have questions, put them in the comments. You know, I'm sure he'll check it and be able to answer anything.
Yeah.
And be sure and check out his channel. Phenomenal work. You're doing great. The channel's growing. I'm super excited for you. I wish you all the best. And like I said, one of my favorite channels because of the depth that you put into it. It is just like turning on the Discovery Channel.
That means
really
so much to me. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for the conversation we had earlier today and this. It's really encouraging to me, and I really appreciate you saying what you said.
Thanks much, man.
You bet.